Welcome to your post-daily news show for Tuesday, May the 10th. I am John Pollock, along with Wai Ting, where we are covering all ranges of blue today. Hello, Wai.
Oh, yes.
Look at this. We've got quite the
Navy.
contrast here.
Yeah. You got like a blue plaid. So you got a bunch of blues.
That's it. That is it.
Yeah.
But not feeling any blues. I am all revved up and ready to go like Dana White in 2001.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you mean?
I'm ready to go. I'm excited to
Why
chat
Dana
with
White
you, Wai.
in 2001?
That was his famous line when they bought the company. He was interviewed, a very awkward Dana White response where he said, "We're revved and ready to go." And it was a famous quote from Dana White right at the beginning of the Zuffa era of UFC.
That is a reference completely flew over my head.
I
Okay.
apologize right off the top. Lots to discuss today. Many news items. If you want to throw in your super chats, we will get to them at the end of the show, providing that I don't steamroll the conversation. But Wai will make sure that your voice is heard as I try to suppress everybody by always forgetting at the end of this. But lots to discuss. Rewind to Raw is up on the site if you want our extensive breakdown on Raw featuring the return of Alexa Bliss, the announcement of a steel cage match next week, and 3 disqualification finishes coming out of WrestleMania Backlash. The WrestleMania Backlash on Monday night in, I have no idea where they were, on Hartford on Monday night.
Yeah, somewhere in that vicinity. Yeah.
You know, Hartford.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into our first news item, and it concerns one Roman Reigns, who on the WWE site, they have their live events page that goes through, you know, all the different TVs and pay-per-views and house shows. And it was noted that Roman Reigns has been removed from the advertising for shows in July and August, with the exception of the stadium events that are happening in July, with Money in the Bank on July 2nd and then SummerSlam on July the 30th. And this coincides with, you know, what we had talked about and others have reported about Roman Reigns expected to be having fewer dates moving forward with what appears to be this new deal that he is entering into. And in asking about this, I was just told that, you know, he is doing the stadium shows and it's not a case of him just being gone for this whole period, except for that. I was definitely given the impression that he will be involved in the build-up to these shows. Now, what extent that entails in terms of appearances and such, that's a question mark. I can't necessarily say, but I don't think this is going to be a case where Roman just disappears and you'll only see him at the pay-per-views. But the larger story here, Wai, is at least in the short term and maybe long term, a reduced utilization of Roman Reigns. Like this, when you go look at his cage match profile, and while you're not seeing him wrestling on TV, this guy's doing all of the live events. He has had a very active 2022, and I think those days are coming to an end where he is doing all of the house shows, all of the TVs, and all of the pay-per-views.
Yeah. Well, it seems to, correspond with reports that he may have signed a new deal. And I think he is appearing to be, elevating himself to a status now where he can basically work a Rock or Hogan or Brock Lesnar schedule, maybe even less than a Brock Lesnar schedule.
I don't think we're going to go to that extent, but we'll see. I mean, the proof will be, in kind of these next few months. Like we'll see. Maybe you're not wrong.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, we could speculate about what he might be doing in that time. Maybe it's a movie. Maybe it's another project. Maybe he just wants to spend time with his family.
Could be. Like he has young children. It's like you have done a whole lot. Like he has been back now for 2 years since that hiatus he took at the beginning of the pandemic. And like he has been the guy. And I think that the next set of questions is around how we structure these stadium shows, and also like who is the big conqueror of Roman Reigns, and what are we looking at? Are we just going to keep riding this train of Roman Reigns, or is it time to be looking at like what are our succession plans when we want to end this title reign? Not to say Roman's career is ending, but just like what is the peak of this 2-year run that has been unprecedented for modern era WWE? I mean, we're comparing this, like the last real comparison would be, Hogan's 4-year run, and that's going back to the mid 80s when that title reign ended.
Certainly, yeah. Well, at least in the interim, I mean, I think we can all look at perhaps WrestleMania as almost, a sure thing that he will be at. Whether or not he'll have the championship is another question. But I think at least in the interim, one of these stadium shows featuring a title change with him perhaps losing it to Drew or losing it to somebody else, I think makes a whole lot of sense. But yeah, for me, I'm most interested in seeing how they keep his presence on TV as they build towards these shows, especially if he's still going to be the champion. This is not just a champion, but a unified champion. So he's going to take the belt away from both shows.
And split crews for a lot of these house shows. Like a
That's
lot of
right.
weekends, it's two shows, Saturday and Sunday night. It's not the expansive house show schedule, but it's house shows nonetheless. And you're not going to have a champion. I mean, at least he is not advertised for any of these live events. And we'll see. I think that is, at the very least, everyone is expecting a reduced live event schedule. And maybe we are at a point now where when WWE comes to town, that is the novelty and the champion. I mean, Roman is your biggest star, but is the championship necessarily make or break of whether you want to go buy a ticket or not?
You also have Ronda Rousey with the championship right now. I mean, she's a name that maybe you can use to instead highlight, as a main attraction for a lot of these shows.
Roman, Drew, and Cody, to me, and I would put Rollins in there. Like that to me is kind of your core that has to pick up any slack when it comes to like the live events. You look at the advertising for all the Raw shows, it's Cody that is front and center in that advertising, and it looks like Drew and Ronda sort of on the SmackDown side. So anyway, that will be very noteworthy to watch, and how Roman is programmed for these stadium events. You need big matches for these shows, and you certainly have Drew in the pipeline. And then the question becomes like those July shows as well. Like who is figured into that mix?
And how important are the secondary titles at this point? Do they give them any more attention than they have for the past, however many years? When you essentially now don't have any major male titles.
It's obvious they are trying to elevate Theory. Like that to me is not some just like I look at Ricochet, for instance. He is holding a title. He is a guy on SmackDown. Theory, I think they are making a concerted effort, but that is far from a title of any note on either brand. So the next story concerns Lacey Evans, which we discussed a lot on Monday's Rewind to Raw. And it was PWInsider.com that reported this morning that when this promo aired on Raw Monday night, it looks like that has signaled the move to the Raw roster for Lacey Evans. And I confirmed that this morning. She is now considered part of the Raw roster. And PWInsider.com also adding that she is expected to be a heel moving forward. So for those that were asking about Friday's SmackDown segment and Samantha Irvin's introduction of Lacey Evans and the wording of it, which I don't have the exact phrase in front of me, but there was some speculation. Oh, was it a flub or did she misspeak? I was told no, that was not a flub or anything like that. That was how it was intended. So read into that what you will. And I guess we will see, because Monday's segment, I mean, we had this discussion on Monday night. You could certainly, like, there were different ways to interpret it based on kind of Corey Graves' reaction, which maybe you're looking a little too deep into. But when she did come out, I mean, it was acting as a babyface, and she was received by that audience as a babyface, as I think anyone would assume after these heart-wrenching stories every week.
Acting as a babyface in 2022 is at least a little ambiguous, because I mean, she came out here slapping high fives. Exactly. I mean, it could be interpreted any way. I am flabbergasted if this is indeed true and that she is being turned into a heel after a series of vignettes talking about what we know to be her real life traumas, and traumas shared by many people listening. I do not understand how they think introducing a person with this type of story would lead to a way for them to create a new villain. I don't get it. Was this always the plan? Did they realize at some point that maybe the audience was turning on it because they aired too many of these segments? I don't get it. But at least, if the line from the announcer on Friday was intentional, then they seem to be at least presenting her as, on the surface, a babyface, but perhaps one who will eventually, or at least quickly, maybe turn on the audience.
And you pointed it out. I mean, like those lines, like you're not improvising if you're a Samantha Irvin on this. And the fact it was on the YouTube version. So, I mean, that tells you everything if you had any questions about that. And then, I was flat out told, like, it was not said wrong, or she did not misspeak when that was stated. I wasn't directly told that she's going in a heel direction, but that is what's been reported, and it certainly gives credence based on the suspicions people had on Friday's segment, and to a lesser extent on Monday. And if you didn't see Monday's one, again, it's a little more vague, but it is Corey Graves just kind of responding to it, and almost had like a smirk, stating her story's really sensational, but it's all true. And it was just an odd line of, you listen to this and the word to describe it being sensational seemed out of place to me.
Yeah. And, no pun intended for the show that we just watched, but there is going to be there already is a lot of backlash to.
This could turn out very bad if you are using that kind of delicate subject matter as the basis for a heel. I do not see how that could possibly pan out well without great criticism, and at a different kind of criticism than typical for some storyline that just is not connecting.
I mean, to call it tasteless would be putting it very lightly. And as Kate has mentioned in our shows, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. To do all of this for purpose.
It's really bad if this
so
is
tone deaf.
The avenue that they are going down. I don't have much more to say about it other than obviously, like, and the move to Raw, it just seems completely out of nowhere at a time, and that's a lesser part of the story. But
so let's kind of play that out. If she is a heel, I mean, would she be next for Bianca?
It seems like they have lined up several heels now for Bianca Belair. Like, you have just brought Asuka back. I know she is a babyface, but you still have Becky in that mix. It looks like a three-way program that they're teasing. You've got Rhea Ripley, who has just turned, and now Lacey Evans on Raw. Potentially in a heel role, unless there is whatever she becomes out of this. So you look at the SmackDown side, and it's one where, with Charlotte Flair taking some time off, I mean, that is the show that, to me, is very low on challengers for a Ronda Rousey, and unless you have like a Bayley, I guess, earmarked for SmackDown.
I would think so. At this point, it just seems SmackDown might need her more. Perhaps, because we just got Alexa Bliss back to Raw as well.
Right, Alexa as well is back in the mix too. Mm-hmm. So it's very heavy on Raw at the moment. Next story. So this has been going on for quite a while. I thought we should just kind of go over where things stand in the case involving Tammy Sitch, who. There are multiple cases going on regarding her. The most prominent has been the incident back in March where she allegedly struck a vehicle from behind, which led to the death of a 75-year-old by the name of Julian Lassiter. So they had been running toxicology reports, by the Ormond Beach Police Department in Florida, and the toxicology report came back. The legal limit for a blood alcohol limit in Florida is 0.08. Her level was 0.28. So that is an extraordinary amount over the legal limit in connection to this March incident. So she was arrested over the weekend. A bond was set at just over $227,000, and 10% of that was posted along with court fees, and she was released on Saturday. A lot of these notes, by the way, coming courtesy of Mike Johnson at PWInsider.com, who has covered this case very thoroughly throughout all of it. So she is facing 9 charges, including DUI causing a death of a person, driving with a suspended or revoked license, 7 counts of DUI causing damage to a person or property, and the DUI causing death, that is a felony in Florida, where the minimum sentence is 4 years, can go up to 30, along with up to $10,000 in fines. She will have an arraignment hearing on May the 31st, but also has another hearing that is technically scheduled for several days before that in New Jersey, where she's facing 11 charges that she has pled not guilty for. But she has been ordered not to leave this county in Florida, and that hearing is in New Jersey. So that one might have to be put on pause, and has an ongoing criminal case from a January arrest for allegedly threatening her partner. This is just, it's a disastrous situation of events, and I don't want to at all come off like callous here, but I really don't know how you assess all of this. This is a diseased individual, and that does not remove any fault here. There is a person, there's a casualty to all of this that is dead as a result of it. And I don't know what the answer is. Rehab has not been able to help Tammy Sitch over the many, many years that she has gone through various rehab stints. She is a danger to society. It's a tragic story, and one that, I mean, when we look at people that have come out of this on the other side and they are celebrated, I think it's with the understanding that they are the few that can do that. It's like addiction typically does not have happy endings at the end of it. It is a struggle. I understand that. But at the same time, it is not just yourself you are punishing. It is others that are victims here. In the case of this, a fatality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very sad story for anybody who has grown up watching her, and has been a fan of a lot of her work. But at this point, it seems like this person has had one too many chances, and I don't see any results coming out of this. I'm hoping, as a person who doesn't want to see another replication of what had happened to this poor man, that I hope she gets put behind bars and, for, I think, an appropriate amount of time.
Yeah. So that will obviously, all of those cases are moving forward. And again, the arraignment for that specific one happening at the end of this month. Antonio Inoki has provided a health update, and Andrew Thompson has a recap of this interview that he did with Tokyo Sports. He had been diagnosed with systemic transthyretin amyloidosis. I hope I'm somewhat close to that description. Basically, an impairment of the blood circulation throughout his body. And in speaking to Tokyo Sports, said he almost died about 4 times. But this has obviously led to him having a much more reduced public profile over the past number of years. I think it really caught people's attention going back over 2 years ago at the Jushin Thunder Liger retirement ceremony after Wrestle Kingdom that year, where he sent in a video. He was just not able to appear live in the building. And certainly a lot of references to Antonio Inoki throughout this 50th anniversary year for New Japan. And yeah, I just don't think people understand like the level of status that Antonio Inoki holds specifically in Japan. Like, this is just a monumental figure that he has been in very, very rough shape for a long amount of time. And I think people obviously recognizing just the fact that he is continuing to struggle with this and cannot even make public appearances at a time when they've kind of been teased, at least on the New Japan side.
Yeah, I'm thinking this interview puts to rest any speculation that he might be making any sort of live event return this year for New Japan's anniversary.
That's what it sounded like. Yes,
and that's perfectly fine. This guy doesn't seem to be holding back. I mean, he I'm sure he could be a lot more specific. And again, I am reading a translation of the article, but
right.
I he's not sugarcoating really the fact that he's not doing well. And
he says he's been in and out of hospital for about 3 years now. I mean, this is it's a realistic picture. I think as honest as he's going to be about, listen, this is. I don't think you should be expecting him to do any more appearances, and this is, pretty much a public statement on his health.
Yep. And but that's not stopping several wrestlers in New Japan from continuing to bring his legacy up, because it is so tied to the company, of course, and I would imagine he still gets mentioned and discussed on the shows, this year.
We'll move over to television ratings from Friday night. So we'll start off with SmackDown. That was up a small amount in viewership. 1,998,000 was your average on Fox for the show going into WrestleMania Backlash, a .46 in 18 to 49, which was approximately 600,000 viewers, up 22%. But that was from the prior week's number that was one of their lowest that they have had. So it was a bit of a rebound there, but still, this was their second lowest 18 to 49 number of the year. 18 to 34, though, they were up 51%, and this wasn't just a bounce back from a low week. This was their best 18 to 34 number since the WrestleMania, the SmackDown following WrestleMania. So they were, in terms of the 18 to 49 rating, they were tied with Shark Tank for the night at .46 and number one in 18 to 34. But it was the NBA playoffs on cable that obviously dominated the night. And so it was not a very good number for SmackDown, although the 18 to 34 number was impressive, especially given the competition. Rampage, on the other hand, airing at 5:30 p.m. Eastern and therefore 2:30 on the West Coast, 292,000 viewers, a .11 in 18 to 49, 143,000 in that category. And these were clearly the lowest numbers in Rampage history. What this meant in the different time slot was a loss of 37% of their viewership, 20% of the demo, a loss of 45% in 18 to 34. The most remarkable number was 35 to 49, only fell 6%, which tells me that is a demo that they will find this episode no matter where you put it on the guide. 50 plus was down pretty big, almost half. So that dragged the number down even more. Again, this is going to be the case for Rampage on Friday nights, but this was, as bad as expected, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, if anytime you have one of these sort of special circumstances, I just kind of wonder, do these results meet their expectations? What do you think, John?
I mean, the show is still among the top 50 in cable programs and was airing at a time that, I mean, if you look at the programming that was airing from 5:30 till 6:30, it was, I think what more could you possibly expect? Like, what else would have been in that time slot if not for Rampage? What was interesting is if you look at the number that the NHL game did in the same time slot, and I compared this to the last 2 weeks of Rampage with all of those going against the NBA, it was pretty much neck and neck with what the last two Rampages did at 10 p.m. against the NBA. So it was similar in viewership. The NHL, though, you would probably surmise is still commanding higher advertising rates, so it's not apples to apples, but in terms of actual people watching, very similar. So I look at it more so of you go through however many weeks of this bouncing around, does that erode at viewership habits? I think that's the bigger question, is just that you get people out of the habit of watching in a certain time and they find something new to do, or they realize a Friday night without wrestling has its appeal. And do they come back, whether it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now, when they're back at 10 p.m., do they come back at kind of a reduced baseline?
And how does AEW combat that with the actual content of the shows themselves? Coming back, do they do a big match, or do they continue to do big matches even if they know that their audience is primarily going to either skip or maybe watch on DVR?
I don't throw in the towel, but if I have a big match, I'm not putting it on one of these four. Like, we're sitting here on a Tuesday afternoon. We don't know when Rampage is on Friday night. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't have a start time yet because they're at the whim of the network and what games are going to be happening on Friday night. So, to me, if something is of value, it should be on Dynamite. And I think kind of the lineup they had for Friday was kind of what I would be shooting for. Like, it was not a show you just throw away and miss. I actually thought Rampage was a great show on Friday. It's just, it was a very inconvenient time, and it's going to be the same this Friday. The big numbers, though, coming out of this weekend, though. The F1 descended into Miami for the inaugural Miami Grand Prix. And on Sunday's race, it was actually on ABC as opposed to ESPN. And they did 2,066,000 viewers with 735,000 in the 18 to 49 demo. Actually very similar to an average episode of SmackDown, maybe a little bit higher in overall viewership. This would be like a non-NBA playoff level of SmackDown. What was interesting is that they were airing head-to-head with a NASCAR race that was on FS1 that did do higher overall viewership, but less in 18 to 49, and that's on cable as opposed to network, where Formula One would have been available in way more homes. You're talking 25 to 30 million more.
Yeah, but what is interesting is, I mean, NASCAR is a beast in America, and this was very much Formula One's, I think,
This is a
big
lot of
weekend.
people watching racing on a Sunday aftening.
Oh, yeah. On Mother's Day, no less, you know? But, I think the bigger story is when you compare it to the previous year, so we were going from Formula One doing a 1 point something. Last year, they did 0.55. So, I mean, almost a doubling of their ratings.
Right.
Year
And
over
some
year.
of that is moving from ESPN to ABC. But yeah, it will be interesting. The fact that this got put on network television this year, I think it tells you like their how bullish they are on F1's audience. So it's hard to compare because all of our comparisons, and Brandon Thurston did a great breakdown of the F1 ratings going back several years, but it's cable comparison. So I don't know how you read this number, but I would say that I would expect more races probably on ABC. Given this one. Also, on Saturday, this might have even been more impressive, was the qualifying at 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN was number 2 for the entire day. The NHL playoff game was the highest. And now, granted, there was no NBA games on cable, but Formula One beat out the other NHL games. They beat the Premier League. They beat the UFC prelims. This was second for the day, 953,000 viewers and a .35 in 18 to 49 for qualifying.
Amazing. Wow.
The qualifying is more like that to me tells me that is an engaged audience. If they're on a Saturday afternoon, which was airing against the Kentucky Derby, which was the big sports event of the whole weekend, doing like, they went against like the Prix stuff for the Kentucky Derby. But yeah, dude, horse racing was doing like 15.8 million people on Saturday.
We love seeing things go fast, I guess.
It's a huge industry, but there you go. That is your F1 ratings report. And the final thing that we will touch upon before wrapping up is tonight's edition of NXT 2.0, which will be airing on the USA Network. And we have Natalya taking on Cora Jade, which has been teased for several weeks. A tag match with Gigi Dolan and JC Jane recovering from burnt feet and their car being moved to take on the assailants, Roxanne Perez and Wendy Chu. We will also have Elba Fire, the former Kaylee Ray, in action, and the start of the NXT Women's Breakout Tournament. I don't believe they have announced any matches yet, but it will feature Lash Legend, Nikita Lyons, Tatum Paxley, Fallon Henley, Ariana Grace, Roxanne Perez, Kiana James, and Sloane Jacobs. Wouldn't want to mix up our Jacobs and James. These names, when you read them all out together, I mean, it's just, they literally got to just have the name generator.
Yeah, it's a lot. You figure we'd get some sort of brackets by now, but I guess but none of them are really sort of like big attraction names yet, so maybe they don't consider it as big of a deal.
Who comes out of this as the winner? I would say your favorites, wouldn't they be maybe Lyons and Perez?
Yeah. I mean, Perez already seems to be at that level where she might be challenging for a championship very soon. So, but I would still, think about putting some extra shine on her with this. At least getting her to the finals, I think would make the most sense. Nikita Lyons also, I think, is somebody with a lot of upside that they're going to push heavily. So maybe her.
All right, so that's coming up. Is it going to be a super edition of NXT tonight?
Oh, yes, it is. I think it will be. And maybe we should chat about it because we at least have one super chat here from Jake from the Windy City. Thank you, as always, Jake, for the support. He sends $5 and says, Bischoff again lately keeps saying that AEW lacks long-term storytelling and can't grow. Is he totally oblivious to how much of a hypocrite he is?
Well, I have not heard a lot of what Eric Bischoff has said, but just going off of this question, long-term storytelling, that's for the viewer to interpret. I think that you can see a lot of long-term direction of where they're going with certain stories. I would say there's a lot going on. It's sometimes hard to keep up with that. But in terms of not growing, very hard to say that when, they have, look at this month of June, where they just sold 14,000 tickets for the United Center, where they have, 13,000 plus for the Forum, They're going to have, a really sizable house in Detroit. And, we just saw that that breakdown year over year in the Observer with their viewership. They have shown growth. Like, I don't think you can dispute that. Like, they have grown at a time when a lot of programs have gone down year over year based on cable erosion. Has not been the case for AEW.
I haven't listened to this clip. I don't think I will. But I mean that.
Yeah, I have not heard it in context, so I don't know if it's being conveyed as such. But just looking at if your thesis is AEW is not growing, the evidence has been to the contrary of that.
Or the idea that they don't do long-term storytelling. I can't think of a I don't know, a more false statement. Like, why don't you Google Brian Mann's Hangman Page videos, or what they're doing right now with, like, I mean, is CM Punk versus MJF not considered long term? What does Eric Bischoff consider long term? Anyway, it's this coincides with something that I did see, and that was a tweet from CM Punk saying wrestling Twitter needs to stop amplifying all the old head bad faith take carny dipshits. They had the ruin in the sun, let them die in the dark with their ego podcast. Quote me. Okay, and I just did. Maybe I should have read that beforehand. Apologies for the cursing, but there you go. But I tend to agree with the sentiment.
In fairness, did he not just amplify that argument? But I mean, it's kind of
well,
I understand what he's saying.
He did, but I mean, this is in an effort to try to stop it, and I tend to agree. Like, I think we know whatever. Like, it's entertainment, and that's what Eric Bischoff is providing with his podcast. It's a take that you may or may not respect, and it's a take that, I mean, I guess is intended to get you talking. How seriously you want to take it, I mean, that's kind of up to you, but I look at it as entertainment.
That's what you have to do is, you have to, like, take whatever at face value, but it's also got to be able to hold up to data and evidence. And if it says in the contrary, then you kind of have to make that conclusion of, like, the source of that opinion and how much value you're going to place upon it. So thank you, Jake, for the super chat. Later tonight, Braden and Davey are back with Up Next. They will be live at 10:15 Eastern, twitch.tv/Up Next podcast to go through the launch of the Breakout Tournament, Natalia and Cora Jade, and the Hooligans, Roxanne Perez and Wendy Chu in action.
More skits, maybe, from other people this week, perhaps?
Can only hope.
Beach or no beach? Tanning salon? What else will they do this week?
Oh, I'm looking for the next chapter of what can we call Duke and Indy now? They need a name.
Dindy.
Dindy.
Inson? No, it's not good.
Indhud.
Okay, no, we'll let them figure that out.
It's going to be a tough road here. But they are live tonight. Wait, if people want to hear a review of Doctor Strange 2, where can they go check that out?
They can go to postwrestlingcafe.com right now. Yeah, we've got our latest review, MCU Later, that's up there right now, talking for at least an hour about this movie, and then spending pretty much 45 minutes on your feedback, talking about your very divisive opinions about this movie and answering some questions and giving our thoughts. So it's, as much fun as it has been to maybe anticipate the film, it's been that much more fun trying to follow the discourse coming out of it, because everybody seems to have a wildly different opinion about what they thought. So if you want to see what we thought, go and check it out right now, postwrestlingcafe.com.
Okay, and Wai and I will be back Wednesday, this very same time, for the Post Daily News Show, and then Rewinded Dynamite on Wednesday night. Your home is postwrestling.com. To support the show, postwrestlingcafe.com. Always great bonus content going up on a weekly basis. So that is going to wrap it up, and thank you for tuning in to the Post Daily News Show.